We're now going to switch to Ambassador Eric Rubin, who's going to talk about the impact of Havana Syndrome on the U.S. diplomatic corps. Eric, Ambassador Rubin, you're on.
Thank you very much, Ken, Dr. DeCleva. And let me just start out on behalf of the men and women of the U.S. Foreign Service, our 17,000 members in the American Foreign Service Association, just saying thank you to everyone who's put this conference together, who's spoken, who contributed to the research. I want to thank Dr. DeCleva and his team who put a lot of work into this. It's deeply appreciated because we need this kind of discussion and we need to focus on what the situation has done to our career public servants, not just in the Foreign Service, but as Mark was just talking about in many other agencies as well. So let me say thank you and also say that it's never easy to follow Dan or Mark, but to follow both Dan and Mark is pretty daunting. So I'll do my best. But I wanted to also say upfront that I'm speaking on behalf of the American Foreign Service Association as a representative of our career foreign service, not on behalf of the US government or the US Department of State. I am active duty with 37 years of experience, but I'm on detail as the elected president of AFSA, and I'm speaking in that context on behalf of our employees. And let me also say that we've been involved from the very beginning in addressing the concerns of our members and the requests for help, going back to the earliest days when we accompanied some of our members up to Penn for the initial evaluation, some of the first that were done. And we've been struggling against the constant drumbeat of skepticism, of assumption that there's nothing real about this. And I can say, after having spoken to dozens of our colleagues who are seriously affected, and knowing that we have several hundred of our colleagues who've reported to us very serious symptoms of these attacks, I think it's fair to say it's pretty clear to me and to my colleagues who work on this every day that this is real. I'm not a doctor or scientist. I don't claim to know anything about causation. I don't plan to try to figure out the causation. That's not within my skill set. There's so many people on this call who are so experienced and skilled at that. All I can say is I'm quite sure, as Mark just said and as others have said, that what's happening is real. People have suffered real trauma and real injury, and it has dramatically hurt our morale, our readiness, our ability to recruit new members of the Foreign Service. It's hurt our retention. And I can say that also solely as a layman who has no medical expertise, I'm quite sure this is not entirely, let's put it that way, a psychogenic or psychosomatic. Some of the op-eds and other commentaries that say it's just hysteria, it's just suggestibility, I find that deeply insulting and offensive. Obviously, not everyone has documented injury, but I do know as a layman and as a patient and someone who's had many family members and friends with serious illnesses, failure to solve a medical mystery cannot and must not be taken as proof that an illness doesn't exist or is psychogenic in nature. And I personally know many of the people who have been affected, and I know them both as a group and I know them as individuals. And I know many of them, I'd say pretty much all the people I know, to be tough, experienced, skilled diplomats who have been in very, very tough places, in many cases under fire. About a quarter of our service has served in Afghanistan and Iraq. And people who are used to hardship and danger as part of their careers and their professional lives. And I also know that in reporting these attacks and what they've done to themselves and their families, in many cases, I think it's fair to say they've sidetracked their careers, damaged their careers, upset their families, upended the lives of their families, their children, if they have them overseas with them. And it's led them down a path of enormously difficult and painful and at times seemingly endless bureaucracy that is just extremely difficult and unpleasant. So it's fair to say there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for people who report having experienced the symptoms that we're discussing. There's actually a huge incentive to try to tough it out and hope it'll go away. And many people have, until, as Mark was talking about, until they realize it's really serious and it's not getting better. And then they get scared and then they reach out for help. That's where we come in for our members for the U.S. Foreign Service in 6 agencies. And we do have members in multiple agencies, not just the State Department, who've been affected. Regardless of what's discovered about causation, and as I said, that's not our business. We are working very hard to ensure that our colleagues get the help and the treatment that they need, that they get taken seriously, that they believe with good reason that their government cares about them and is doing everything it can to help them, support them, protect them, and to protect others who may be subject to this kind of situation in the future. We've been pushing for pretty much 4 years now to get the Department of State to make the process of reporting anomalous health incidents easier and more transparent, to make getting treatment more standardized and easier as well, to get access to Walter Reed for our affected members, for some of them. We have had quite a number of our colleagues treated at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, but in some cases, as Mark was talking about, Walter Reed has unique capabilities. And initially we were told it's only for uniformed service members. And we knew that wasn't true, and it's not true. It's for a lot of people. It's for senior members of the executive branch, for members of Congress, sometimes even senior congressional staff, or civilian DoD officials. So we pushed really hard. We did succeed, but it was not easy, and it's still case by case. We're pleased with recent developments at the State Department, which have included the appointment of 2 senior career ambassadors, and Jonathan Moore and Margaret Uyehara, to take care of both the advocacy and the care aspects of this. It's a big improvement, but we still find that our bureaucracy, and in this case, I'm not talking about the political leadership, I'm talking about the career public servants that we work with, especially in the medical side of things and in the personnel side of things, are frequently not transparent and not very ready to share information, even when the employees involved ask them to. And we feel very strongly that there needs to be a stronger interagency effort. It needs to have the White House endorsement that the designation by President Biden of a coordinator, I think, is exactly what's needed, but that has to be followed by a real interagency concerted effort, not just on the causation front, but on the care front, and on addressing what this is doing to our ability to recruit people, get them to be willing to serve overseas, get them to be able to stay overseas, get them to want to stay in service for a full career. We appreciated the interest of Congress, and we worked with senior staff and members in both chambers on the Havana Act. We were part of the group of organizations that were consulted and contributed. We had no coordination or consultation with the administration on that, no engagement. It's not that we didn't want it, but we're hoping going forward that that will change. We also are going to be looking at some needed tweaks to the Havana Act, especially as the language exists regarding diagnosis of injury, and making that a little broader and making that more inclusive. So I think this is a critical moment. And I also would just add, it's never easy to serve our country overseas. It has gotten harder in many respects, and I say that with the benefit of almost 4 decades of experience. Havana Syndrome has made it harder. If it were just Havana Syndrome, and if it had just happened in Havana, then I think the fact that it would have been limited to a post that has always been very difficult, with serious hardship, with constant attacks and harassment from local authorities, I think would have been a containable problem. But the global nature, the fact that it's spread all over the world, including to normally what we call permissive posts, whether it's Vienna or Berlin or Geneva, means that this is global. And, as I've said many times, and I think some of you on this call have said before, there might be Cuban crickets in Havana, but there are definitely no Cuban crickets in Geneva or Vienna or Berlin or Shanghai. So that kind of theorizing, I think, is a dead end and really harmful. And so it is getting harder when we recruit people. And I've had young members of the cohort that's coming into the Foreign Service or considering it, people who've passed the Foreign Service exam, ask me, if I do this, what am I getting into? And is this going to get worse? Is this going to get solved? Are all the government agencies involved really taking steps to protect and defend our people? If I get attacked and if I get injured, who's going to be there for me? And we've got to address that. Dan addressed this better than I can, but if there were to be a state actor behind this, one has to assume that the major motivation would be denigrating our readiness and reducing our ability to get our job done for America. And we've got to take that seriously and be ready to assure our people that we are doing everything we can. So that's where we're pushing. And we need help from outside the government as well to push the administration and the Congress. The Congress has already stepped forward with legislation to make clear that they're doing everything they can to protect our career public servants and to find a way to stop or ameliorate these attacks, and also to get to the bottom of what happened and why, and whether adequate steps were taken to respond and to protect our people when this first became apparent. So that's our agenda. We'll be pursuing it very actively. Again, staying away from causation, that's not our area, but taking care of our people and ensuring that people want to join public service, stay in public service, in the Foreign Service in our case, is critical. And so far, I would say we're not there yet. This is still hanging out there as a huge hit on morale and a huge cause of stress and worry. And that affects our readiness, and it affects the willingness of people to go overseas and serve. So that's our biggest focus. And with that, Dr. de Kleve, I'd love to take the conversation wherever you'd like to go.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rubin, for your presentation. And thank you and the members of the State Department for the diplomatic service that you all do to help keep our country safe. There's a question to you where, while you said that causation, I'm paraphrasing the question, the causation is not in your bailiwick. And as you're aware, embassies have members of diplomatic security that protect the building, if you will. And so they asked, what sort of things can you talk about that are being done in terms of protecting people against any possible hypothetical pulsed attacks or radio frequency attacks? And I want to add to that question, all of the attacks that have not happened inside the embassy, but have happened in hotels or apartments, which don't have the same level of protection. But if you could comment on that, please.
Absolutely. And let me just add, not just hotels and apartments, but cars and offices of other people outside the embassy. And that's one of the hard parts in trying to figure this out. We have a great diplomatic security service. They're professionals. They work very hard to keep us safe, but it's very hard to address threats that you can't understand. And I would say if it were just our embassies, which tend to be fairly hardened, although not against RF or energy or other things, but there are things that could be done inside our embassies, but that's clearly not the entire problem. And as a matter of fact, with the people we've spoken to, a majority of the incidents have occurred outside our official premises in housing, hotels, cars. So that makes it even harder. Obviously, we've come a long way in terms of giving people advice and recommendations on what to do if they think they're experiencing symptoms. I think now our security officers overseas are much better briefed and ready to respond. I will say there were some very difficult moments over the past 4 years where people were essentially told, never heard of that, you must be imagining it. I think you need to talk to the psychiatrist, but she or he won't be here for 3 months because, as you know well, visits are infrequent in certain parts of the world. If you want to request a curtailment of the assignment for compassionate reasons because you're clearly experiencing mental illness, then we can do that. But we have no idea what you're talking about, and this must not be something real. I don't think anyone's saying that now, but initially there was a lot of that. There was also a lot of people being told, well, we can't send you back to the US for a medevac for evaluation, but if you want to ask to curtail your tour and end your assignment and go home and pursue it with your own doctors, because once we get back from an assignment in general, we're on our own in terms of medical care, although Med is doing better. The State Department medical office is doing better now than it was in providing assistance to people who do come back from overseas. But that can be a very damaging thing to do, to just leave an assignment without explanation. And the way our system works is it can't be explained in an evaluation, which means when you're being reviewed for promotion, all they know is that you left and you didn't complete your assignment. So for all those reasons, I think it's a big concern. I will say, I didn't hear anybody mention it, but I recently rewatched some episodes of Madam Secretary, and there is actually an episode set in my former embassy in Sofia, Bulgaria, of some kind of sonic or RF attack on the US embassy there. It was depicted as being inside the embassy building. But I thought, given that it's about 7 years old, the episode, I thought that was a little eerie.
Another question that was asked by Dr. Cullum earlier this morning in an email to me. Do we know of family members, including children overseas, diplomatic dependents, who've been impacted by this? And if you're able to comment, where have they gone for their medical care? Because my understanding is a child couldn't go to Walter Reed.
Correct. The answer is yes. I can't give you exact numbers, but just among the people who've asked us for our assistance, we know of several. We know of a family that recently came out of Germany with a 10-year-old kid, and the brain scan showed abnormalities. And I know there are a lot of people on this call who understand better than I do. That doesn't prove causation, obviously, but the kid was experiencing pretty serious symptoms of something, and then there do apparently appear to be abnormalities. That's just one case. There are others, and of course that's wrenching, and that's the kind of thing that, and yes, it's not possible for children to go to Walter Reed, and in general, people are on their own in the sense they have to track down competent care. And there aren't a lot of specialists even in DC who deal with this kind of thing. So that's pretty scary also.
Dr. Chris Gilbert of Psychology Today has a question. If you can describe any cases that have happened in automobiles. That's something new that hasn't been widely publicized.
Only that we have colleagues who have reported to us, not that attacks occurred solely in automobiles, but that they had experienced symptoms of an attack both at home and in their car. And I can't say any of this has been documented except by reporting, but it definitely has been reported. And that is also obviously a big concern.
Christian Hagenmuller asking, how can the international community support the forensic and medical forensics, if you will, and search for further evidence? Is that something you're able to comment on?
Well, I know there is an interagency effort working on causation, and we're not part of that. And I don't wish to be. And I imagine that they would be sharing information, especially within the Five Eyes and with other countries. We do know that Canadian diplomats have reported similar attacks, and I'm quite sure that there's been communication with their security and medical people. But that is one of the other puzzles of this is US and Canadian diplomats have reported this, but to my knowledge, not diplomats from other allied countries, or so it raises some interesting questions there. But I do imagine that is going on, and I imagine every embassy, every diplomatic mission overseas, certainly our allies are thinking about how do they protect their people, could this happen to them, and taking their own steps.
I think that's all the questions we have. I want to thank you, Ambassador Rubin, for your presentation. And we're going to take a break and reconvene at 2:45. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.